In this hour or so, or less, I'll try to really define what Islamophobia is and how any type of phobia begins and starts and takes life of its own. And when it does, what does it do? How does it affect and impact people? And we all acknowledge and recognize that any thing like this, whether it is anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, racism, sexism, all of these things are negative and are not healthy for a healthy society. Someone got to do something to end it, and that's our collective role. So I'll share some suggestions, especially for all of you, the educators, who can help your student population understand and acknowledge the consequences of this social ill, and then can equip them perhaps as well to deal with. So that's the overall objective of this session. So I will define purely objectively what Islamophobia is, and how does it start, who suffers from it, and then indeed what can we do about it. So a textbook definition of phobia is anxiety disorder. So I am very anxious to a point where my well-being is disturbed, and it's persistent, and it's a persistent fear of an object or a situation. You know, some people are phobic to traffic. Some people are claustrophobic, don't take elevators even if it's on 26th floor. And we all know of these situations. And they commit to great lengths in avoiding, typically disproportional to the actual danger posed. So elevator is definitely going to come down on level 1 or ground floor, but they will go disproportionately difficult times to avoid that situation. So that's a very textbook definition. And we all have different kinds of these persistent and anxiety and disorders. Now, in this context, Islamophobia, there is a prejudgment that if he or she is a Muslim or like a Muslim, not necessarily a Muslim even, looks like. So South Asians, from people from India, overwhelming majority, 80% of the population are non-Muslims, Hindus, but they look exactly like me. So there is a prejudice against anyone who looks like or who is Muslim or Arab Christians. They are not Muslims. Arab Jews who are not Muslims, but they look like, and therefore. And as a result of that prejudgment, there is a level of hatred. And that level of hatred is expressed in a variety of ways. And we will see some of those examples. And it's irrational. There is no there is no intellectual basis for being afraid of either the faith of Islam or the people, practitioners of that faith called Muslims. That's basically Islamophobia, very akin to anti-Semitism, frankly. Now, I want to give this example. How many of you love this thing? How many of you can sleep with them on your pillow as your pet? I do. I'm making this up to make a point, right? So it's subjective, who likes, who doesn't like, and doesn't like to a point of hatred, irrational. This is not going to kill me, this is not going to hurt me, I know what to do with it, and so on and so forth. But conversely, when my kids ask me to go to Six Flags I run in the opposite direction after giving them a check. Because I hate this stuff. I hate this stuff. So it's a very subjective thing, who loves what and who hates what. And oftentimes, in the context of phobia, irrational fear, it is irrational. So how does it start, or how did it start in our context in the United States? Now we, as a nation, as a society in the United States, we have manufactured, I think someone invoked earlier Edward Syed, and this is his term also, making the other. So there is this thing, us or we, and then there is the other. So we manufactured the other, and there are examples. At one time, we called African American women the big lip mama. These are the terms that are used: the mean carpenter for Jews, the diseased alien, recently used against Latinos, the Japanese, the Chinese, and now the privileged and distinction is for us, the towel heads. Right? These are the terms that we have used to manufacture the other. And then we market this through these entities: politicians, preachers, talking heads, and so on. And they promote this other concept. So I gave some examples we briefly discussed earlier about the wise Dr. Ben Carson, a neurosurgeon. I would hate to get operated by him when he says that a Muslim can never be a president or hold an office in his cabinet. And then there are people of faith. Franklin Graham is a very well-known person who has basically made a judgment against a 1400 plus years old tradition followed by 1.5 billion people, that this is wicked and this is evil. And he has access to millions of God-loving, faithful people of Christianity. Mike Huckabee, former and now presidential candidate, referring to Muslims as uncorked animals. I'm not making this up, these are quotes. So you manufacture the other first, you market that the other, and then you sell it through research outfits, think tanks, media institutions, and academia as well. And once this other is manufactured in the society, then you can do whatever you like to do toward them and of them. Then it will be tolerated by the population at large. And that's the brief discussion I had, that I am not so worried about Ben Carson and Franklin Graham and Mike Huckabees. These are just individuals, although they do a great deal of damage. But the greater damage is from those who gave $1 million to Ben Carson within 24 hours after he uttered these words. Those are common good people like you and I, but completely oblivious and ignorant of the reality, right? Those are the people that kind of makes me nervous. And the reasons for that are some that I'm going to list some. There is this wonderful book that you might like to take a look at, The Islamophobia Industry, How the Right Wing, Political Right Wing, Manufactures the Fear of Muslims. An extraordinary good resource that you can take a look at. It truly is an industry. There are certain vested interests of certain groups of people who wish to create this environment where Muslims and Islam becomes a permanent enemy and a permanent foreigner in our midst. And some of us, I am an immigrant, but my children, and God willing their children to come, they aren't going anywhere. They are going to be staying here. This is their home, right? It is my home. I chose, unlike my children who are born here. And therefore, I cannot afford to see an America whereby my children are afraid of your children and vice versa. So it is extremely important to undo this industrialization of the Islamophobia industry that we have manufactured. So here are some very smart looking people, well suited, booted like me, right? The signs they are carrying, this is the 2010 midterm elections that we cannot build a mosque. Muslims cannot build a mosque. So there was a campaign. In different election cycles, we have different campaigns, interestingly. One time was Sharia, and we discussed Sharia a little bit this earlier in the morning. And then there is this campaign now, or has been a campaign of no more mosques in United States, because as we discussed, Muslims are here to take over and implement Sharia and convert United States of America into an Islamic land. And then we have the politicians, as I mentioned. This is Mr. Peter King of New York, and this is, of course, a cartoon, but it refers to some facts. Neo-Nazis, right-wing militias, and IRS haters, and anti-abortion zealots. Now, these dots represent the number of violent actions that has happened in the country. So the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, their reports indicate that the largest number of violent incidences that has happened in United States as of today is by right-wing militias and neo-Nazis, right? But the challenge here for the politicians is to portray the 6-7 million Muslims in this country as either all violent or more prone to violence, or future potentially future terrorist and violent people. And all of those other dots don't actually need connecting. Remember, I shared with you the connecting of dots, that sometimes and oftentimes we miss the obvious. The sun comes during the day when it is bright anyways, and therefore I don't like the sun. Right? This is a good example of that. Now, and then there are pundits, the talking heads. So Pamela Geller is a firm believer of Muslims imposing Sharia in United States. So Turkey, Muslims enjoy Thanksgiving just as we all do. Instead of having a kosher turkey, Muslims go for a halal turkey. And Pamela Geller pissed off that Muslims out there, they can have a halal turkey on Thanksgiving. And she said this: across this great country on Thanksgiving, infidel Americans, implied Muslims, are serving halal turkeys to their families, turkeys that are halal certified. Who wants that? Especially on a day on which we are giving thanks to God for our freedom. I would knowingly buy a halal turkey, would you? This is a celebrated pundit by the right wing. And I want to quickly share this little clip about what is Sharia. Somebody had asked earlier.
There's been a lot of fearful talk lately about Muslims imposing Sharia law in the West. Now, what fearmongers don't tell you is that Sharia has been practiced in the Americas for centuries. Let's start with what the word actually means. The root meaning of Sharia is a path. For Muslims, it's a system of guidance for everyday life. Keeping your body clean is a part of Sharia. Praying is also a part of Sharia. Fasting and charity, they're a part of Sharia too. Historians tell us Muslims were in the Americas at least since the 14th century, so it's safe to say Sharia has been around for some time. The two main sources of Islamic law are the Quran and the authentic traditions of the Prophet. Muslim jurists have developed highly detailed principles for understanding these source texts. While legal experts may have different interpretations, all of them agree that time, place, and local customs impact the law and its rulings. Islam requires Muslim minorities to live in harmony with the laws of their homeland. Freedom of religion makes being a good Muslim and a good citizen attainable for most people. Civic participation also allows people to safeguard their rights as citizens. In the worst case scenario, if a person believes they're unable to practice their faith, the Quran advises them to follow in the footsteps of great prophets like Abraham and Moses and migrate to a better situation. To learn more, click on the links below. May God's peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum.
So I wanted to share this clip just to highlight this irrational fear that's stoked against Muslims and Islam in the context of Sharia by certain special interest groups. Now, when all of this happens, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What is the halal turkey or halal?
Halal.
What is that?
Halal turkey. So it's the way it's slaughtered essentially, right? Within the Judaic tradition and the Islamic tradition, instead of shooting the turkey with a little BB gun or whatever, you actually slaughter it in a certain fashion, invoking the name of God, and therefore it either becomes kosher from the Judaic tradition or it becomes halal from the Islamic tradition. That's all there is to it. So going back earlier, what I mentioned here, that you manufacture, you market, and then you sell, and the people are conditioned to begin to irrationally be afraid of people or a certain idea. What happens then? Somebody pays a price of that irrational fear. Oftentimes it is innocent people, bystanders, and I'll give you some real life examples. Some of us may have heard recently the inventor Ahmad Muhammad. How many of you have heard of this, right? Couple of you. So I think it's good that we watch a quick clip of this guy.
14-year-old high school student arrested for bringing a homemade clock to school. His teacher thought the device was a bomb. The backlash to his arrest was swift online. The hashtag #IStandWithAhmed quickly becoming a top trend, with responses from Silicon Valley to the White House. Ahmed Muhammad is going to join us in just a moment. First, ABC's Ryan Owens has his story.
This high school freshman loves to tinker with all things electronic, but his latest invention got the 14-year-old hauled in handcuffs to the police station in Irving, Texas. Take a look at his homemade digital clock, a maze of wires and circuit boards inside a metal case. He built it at home to impress his teachers, but one of them thought it might be a bomb and alerted authorities.
That's a very suspicious device. We live in an age where you can't take things like that to schools.
But arresting a 14-year-old?
I think this wouldn't even be a question if his name wasn't Ahmed Muhammad.
Police say they are not charging Ahmed, but they are standing by their initial response. So are school officials, who suspended him for 3 days. This morning, he's something of a techie superstar. Twitter inviting him to intern, Google asking him to their science fair, Mark Zuckerberg wants him to visit Facebook, and even the President of the United States tweeting him, "Cool clock, Ahmed. Want to bring it to the White House?"
You're going to the White House, my friend? Yes.
For Good Morning America, Ryan Owens, ABC News, Irving, Texas.
All right, Ryan, thank you very much. And now we're going to talk with Ahmed Muhammad.
Do you guys want to hear this, or you do?
In Dallas. So good to see you and to get a chance to talk with you, Ahmed. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to design this clock and bring it to school.
I brought the clock to impress my teachers. And